First of all, welcome to this, what we call square table. And that's part of squaretable.org. We developed this concept to make sure that not only people on this side of the table, but on the other side of the table are all equal in this democratic environment that has been created by technology. So what we wanted to do was to make sure that each one of you is also a speaker, and therefore you got a mic in front of you. We are really very happy that so many of you have come over. We thought we'll have a nice little group of 60, 70 people, industry players, and we ended up having over 175 registrations. And so we had to extend it a little bit more. It's really a delight. I think industry is now maturing. I remember way back when we set up very first fund for India, the managerial pool was very small, almost nearly absent. With all the difficulties that we create legal and other challenges, I must admire this industry has done a great job. How to wade through most complex situations and programs or problems, is something that has been demonstrated. So if our industry can do well here in India, I'm sure we can do anything anywhere in the world, So, and I'm sure in next 5, 10, 15 years, Indian private equity players will begin to think global and do things around the world. Already some of the players like ILFS and other ones have gone outside and have demonstrated that we can do it. And it's just that our regulations are slightly strangulating at times, so you do not allow people to expand so easily. But I'm sure we are creative people, and we'll find ways to do things around. As all of you know, as a firm, we are a research-based law firm. Almost close to 40% of our time is spent on research, academics, thought leadership, and stuff like that. Because we believe that it's just not the law or tax that we practice. We have to practice what you call as a change agents or change. If we do not change things around us for the better, I think we are not serving our purpose fully. I would also suggest that we have to bring some simple changes in our laws to encourage private equity and venture capital funding both, particularly private equity to start with, because India needs a lot of growth capital. It is most unfortunate that a simple issue like pass-through, we are not able to lay hand on. It is surprising that no country in the world, we do a lot of comparative law studies and study different laws and taxation around the world. No country in the world has such complex regime for pass-through. You take US, UK, Singapore, any other country, pass-through is a norm. We are not asking for any concession. We're not asking for any relief. All that we say, at a pooling level, you do not tax, you tax at an individual investor level. I think this is a simple thing. Somewhere along the line, our laws that were crafted long ago, they were much clearer. In last some years, we created a complete mess out of our legal system. It's very unfortunate. As a lawyer, I have to speak, I have no vested interest in that particular way, but it is very unfortunate. No country in the world has so much of problem on pass-through. And my colleague Rajesh and other colleagues will also walk you through recent circular that has, created even more confusion than what it existed before. So we need to get that thing under control. We recently had a similar what we call Square Table in New York just last month. And once again, there is so much interest. We thought, again, the same way, 60, 70 people would turn up, and we had almost 148 turning up. We had to move from small room to ballroom and change. So we started with a ballroom here, basically. But there is so much interest in India, but people are waiting at the door. People are waiting at the door. They are worried that whether the regime is stable, whether some of the pass-through issues will be sorted out. Okay, why should tax be so much of an impediment? We just cannot understand. I think this is something we need to really fix, and fix very quickly, because if you do not fix this problem very quickly, people will look at other things, and in India people talk, they don't do. This is one. Obviously, we heard Mr. Jaitley saying that they would generally not bring retrospective amendment. That was a big, good news for a lot of people around. But if you look at the same budget, which says we will not bring in retrospective amendment in Part A, Part B contain retrospective amendment. So what government talks at the top and what tax department or other people in the finance ministry do is something different. This is what we really need to fix. There must be, the tone at the top must be implemented at the bottom level. So there is no syncing of the ideas and working together. I think this is something we really need to very quickly fix. If you look at, people talk about, when you talk of retrospective amendment, what do we talk? We talk only Vodafone. People think this is one single case. Can you imagine how many retrospective amendments have been brought in India since the start of the Income Tax Act? Any guess, except those who know? Okay, over 200. Over 200 retrospective amendments were brought in from 1961 to now. But in last about 4 or 5 years, we had over 150. So what was an exception became a norm. This is something we need to really, understand, that every time court judgment comes or otherwise, you have this retrospective amendment. This is something that we really need to fix as well. Third thing is, when we develop our laws, we do not appoint law commission. Traditionally, there was an institution called law commission, comprising of judges, lawyers, business people, accountants, industry people, and so on and so forth. That practice has been given up. So we must revive that practice. What has happened to Companies Act, I think all of us know. We are two horses riding on the same, and you don't know how to go about it. So two acts concurrently working is a little bit of a problem. Plus a lot of issues. It started off very well, but when it came to articulation, we had a little problem. Direct Taxes Code, again, same thing happened, that we did not appoint law commission, only some tax official got together. There was no even terms of reference. And eventually what happened, it turned out to be a bad piece of legislation, unfortunately. And it is creating a lot of problems. So I think we should revive that institution. It is not that we cannot do it. We have learned a lot of lessons in last 4 or 5 years. I think we should, nobody succeeds unless he fails some point in time, right? So we failed in last 4 or 5 years what we should have done. And just like any other entrepreneur, country is also an entrepreneur, and now we are even more entrepreneurial, hopefully, government. So we are expecting that things would be better. Other thing is that the question of environment that has been created in the country, we can very easily now move fast forward. If this government cannot do it, I think it will be very difficult for any other government to do it. And we should quickly move. That is very, very critical. IVCA has done a wonderful job and brought us all together, which is good news. And Arvind has put in a lot of work in helping organize this. Lots of our clients and other people are here. Once again, as a firm, most of our clients are international, and work is international. And we think that if we want to change the system, sometimes it is better not to reinvent the wheel. As I was mentioning, articulation, development of law. For example, if we could have taken a new Companies Act simply from, say, English, 1984, okay, or Delaware law, which is very well developed, okay, or Singapore, which is now developing a new law. Singapore is still in the process of changing, but still. What would have happened? LLP, for example. You know, there is one set of rules in the US, LLP. England has one set, and Singapore has followed English model, basically. It would be easier if we simply copy the law and make some modification that may suit our needs. I'm not saying copying, of course, is the best form of appreciation, imitation as they call it. But the precedents and the judgments that are given overseas would be also helpful in interpreting the same law. That is the reason why, you know, many a times we take laws from overseas, and a lot of research and thought leadership goes into in some of these jurisdictions. Delaware constantly reinvents itself. So they got largest number of companies incorporated, you know, so we should be taking best practices and developing what C.K. Prahlad used to say, next practices. So basically, these are the things that really we need to quickly move on, because we don't have time. The difficulty, we don't have time. So how do you quickly move? Let us take some best practices and implement them and move forward and do our own innovation, whatever little bit. But sometimes we also have done some tricky things. Like, for example, general anti-avoidance provisions were introduced. Many countries have, not all. Many countries have. So in principle, say what is wrong about it. But what we did, Australia, Canada, South Africa, and some other countries have. We took South African section. Okay, we copied it nearly. But whatever safeguards were provided to taxpayer were removed systematically. This is what we should not do again. So when I'm talking about taking best practices, just take best practices, not distort it. And I'm not trying to be negative here. Please don't get me wrong. I think we have so much to do in India, so much opportunity. It just pains that why can't we tap those opportunities? Why can't we bring those fruits to our own country when we have such a talent like people sitting in this room? We have, why not? You can do anything around the world. It just, we have to facilitate our investment regime, which is to some extent happening. Okay. I do not want to take too much time because I want to play by the minute. For your benefit, you know, there are a number of books that have been on this thing, so you can all take all of them home, and you can read or you can outsource to us. We have read for you, so we'll tell you what is therein. But if you, some weekend would be coming in the December time or whenever, but this will be very helpful to you. You can see this is what we spend, as I said, almost 40% of our time on research academics, and we put almost all our work in public domain. So I went to one of the conferences, and I was, surprisingly, somebody spoke, and he said, Nishith Desai is an open source law firm. You will see huge amount of research we put in public domain and just free, because we are not in the business of publishing and selling. So we believe its idea is that if you learn something, share it, and that's the way to grow together. And other thing is, during this round table, what we now call square table, okay, and we have kept some windows also open. So we think out of box, out of those windows. It's not exactly square in that sense. If you have any question or anything, you can also mark it to what is called fundsteam@nishithdesai.com while the conference is on. Or sometimes, you know, it may not be possible to cover everything, and therefore feel free to. So if you can answer during the course of the conference, we'll be happy to deal with that. If you can't, then we'll perhaps reply to you at later. As was mentioned, our mobile app is also on now. It's called Nishith Mobile. So you can download, and these proceedings are fully recorded, so they will all be on the mobile app. I think we have about 60, 70 people on the phone as well, so there may be some people dialing in. So that's the other thing. We try to take, world is a theater, right? Shakespeare said long ago, and we are all players. So feel free to interact, enjoy your time, And what I would like to do is to invite Arvind Mathur, President of IVCA. He will tell about IVCA and also his other thoughts. And I would also ask him to launch and at this conference and have a good time. Do wait until evening. We have a good cocktails after all the headache that you might get. But as you all know that we won the second most innovative law firm award in whole of Asia, including Australia. It was interesting because Australia and China had to combine to beat India just 1 point down. So in lighter vein. And but I think we have it. I think we can do it. I think that I'm not necessarily arrogant about what I'm talking. I'm saying we all feel proud that, you know, we can do what anyone else can do in the world. And with those words, I'll, for the time being, sit down. Thank you so much. And Arvind, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nishith bhai. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this IVCA Circles event, which has been so graciously sponsored today by Nishith Desai Associates. Thank you very much, Nishith bhai, and all of your professional colleagues at Nishith Desai Associates. I will briefly talk about 5 points today in my talk. One is, it's about the IVCA. The first thing I want to say about IVCA is that IVCA, which is the Indian Private Equity and Venture Capital Association, exists broadly speaking for two categories of, or two groups. One is the private equity and venture capital industry and the service providers for this industry. On the one hand, on the other hand, the entrepreneurs, the businessmen, and the companies that receive this capital. So our raison d'etre of our association is these two broad categories. I'm going to talk about 5 points. One is our advocacy activities. The second is the important issue of pass-through or the lack of it right now here in India. Studies recently that IVCA has been involved in together with Bain and Company. We did one study and another one we're doing with McKinsey. Some of our events that we've organized, and I'll tell you briefly about our publications. First, a quick word about advocacy activities of IVCA. The principal function of IVCA is to make recommendations to government authorities for reforms that help private equity and venture capital. We interact closely with bodies like SEBI, the Ministry of Finance, and RBI. In the recent past, we have submitted a number of representations to these bodies. These included a pre-budget representation which was given to the Ministry of Finance prior to the budget. We also submitted a number of representations to SEBI in response to their various consultation papers. And also want to let you know that we take inputs from our members before we send these our responses to various consultation papers. For example, IVCA sent representation memos to SEBI on REITs and infrastructure investment trusts, and on the eligibility of funds for pass-through taxation. And I do want to thank very much some of the people who are present here, like Archana and also ICICI Ventures who are present here for actively contributing to some of these inputs that we provide to organizations like SEBI. Turning to pass-through status, I'm sure it's going to be discussed a lot today. Currently, IVCA is engaging in discussions with the Ministry of Finance and SEBI on the pass-through tax regime. Presently, automatic tax pass-through status is restricted to venture capital funds as a subcategory of Category 1 AIF, whereas the rest of the subcategories like SME funds, social venture funds, infrastructure funds under Category 1, and other two categories, namely Category 2 and 3 alternative investment funds, are not accorded such a status. As you know, many AIFs are structured as trusts to enable pass-through based on the ruling given in 1996 in respect of a fund sponsored by AIG and ILNFS, whose anchor investor was the Asian Development Bank. This was a most helpful ruling because it ensured a pass-through tax structure so long as the trust could be characterized as a determinate trust and the manner of determining shares was clearly articulated in the trust deed. This is going to get discussed in much greater detail today afternoon. Accordingly, many funds have been structured as determinate trusts pursuant to this ruling of 1996. However, on the 28th of July 2014, the Central Board of Direct Taxes issued a circular where the concept of determinate trusts as articulated in the AIG Asian Development Bank ruling was overturned effectively. This has been a major setback for the domestic Indian private equity and venture capital industry. The association's view is that Section 1023FB of the Indian Income Tax Act 1961 should be amended to provide pass-through for all alternative investment funds. The association is continuing to engage in dialogue with both the Ministry of Finance and SEBI to enable pass-through status for all AIFs. The association has recommended a suitable amendment to SEBI with respect to the SEBI AIF Regulations 2012. There are several other regulatory hurdles which were hinted at by Nishith Desai before I came on and started talking, currently facing the PE and VC industry, which will be discussed by various experts today afternoon. Your association cooperated with Bain & Company to write a report showing helpful data and trends in Indian private equity, which was released at the beginning of this year. Your association has also recently engaged McKinsey & Company to do a study of Indian private equity and venture capital. The aim of the McKinsey study is to make recommendations on how the supply of private equity and venture capital can grow from both domestic and international sources for investment in India. As and when the report is released or is ready, it will be released on the association's website for everyone to read. And a word about associations are the IVCA's events. The association also organizes events of relevance to the private equity and venture capital industry. An example is today's event. We organized 3 workshops on the New Companies Act 2013 in Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore. We organized several meetings in Mumbai with our members to discuss regulatory hurdles. Last year, we organized a highly successful conclave in New Delhi, which included the participation of the Minister of Finance and the SEBI chairman. Work on this year's conclave is ongoing as we speak. On the 19th of September this year, we are convening an event in Mumbai titled Private Equity in Real Estate and REITs. In addition, we have supported several other events in the United States and India organized by our respected members, such as Nishith Desai Associates. We have also worked with other firms, and we are ready to work with any of our members in organizing events. I urge you to take more initiative and spread the word about the benefits of private equity and venture capital in India amongst policymakers. Please go ahead, give speeches and interviews wherever you can, and write insightful articles in newspapers and magazines highlighting the advantages of private equity to our economy. If you wish, you can send us your articles and we will put up the best ones on the IVCA website for everyone to read. I also want to mention a word about our publications. We have published the latest issue of what we call the Ripe magazine. Here it is. This is the latest issue of the Ripe magazine, which is called Reporting on Indian Private Equity and Venture Capital. This has been published this year. I have brought from New Delhi some copies, and they are going to be available outside of the registration desk. There's a small charge for it, so you can pay it over there. The latest issue contains a summary of discussions at the previous IVCA conclave in Delhi, and many insightful articles on PE and VC by several experts. We have also published a private equity and venture capital funds directory, which is now going to be released in a few days' time. Once again, Nishith Bhai, thank you so much, and I wish this event all success.
What I would like you to do is to launch conference, so why not?
Okay, so you know this is going to be there's going to be some great discussions today, and
Some fireworks.
yeah, some fireworks.